Okay.
응답하라 여친. Go to the into the 실.
Back to the gang to the Jew. Hey. So Jane.
Yes.
나 눈치 좋잖아.
Uh-huh.
My 눈치, the awareness is like sharp.
Uh-huh. And how would you describe 눈치? How would
reading
you
the room.
define it? Okay,
reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
But in literal sense, we've talked about this before. 눈 means eye. Chi is awareness. I think I wonder if it's like comes from that term tai chi, like, you know, the energy, reading of energy, or I'm pretty certain that's the origin of it or something. Anyways, I came into the recording studio,
and you could feel. Did you feel a cloud?
Immediately, I sensed your energy was somber. And then right after I sat down, I was like, Jane, how are you?
Yeah.
And you're like, I feel like I'm coming down with something. But I also know you had some big news in your family. And I asked you if it's okay for us to talk about this. Because I think, number one, it's always important to check in on, especially when we're talking about real things. It's always important for me to make sure that you're okay talking about it.
Yeah.
And we discussed this just for our listeners to know. Before we started recording, we discussed what our boundaries are. And we do want to show you the authentic sides to ourselves that are real. That's why we do this, because it's talking with our girlfriends.
Yeah.
But you got pretty big news yesterday within your family.
Yeah, my mom texted me, and let's see, at the time of recording, it's June 3rd. June 4th? It's June 4th today. So she texted me last night and said that she's been in the hospital overnight because my grandpa was admitted. And my grandpa is almost 95 years old, and he's been in a home, like an assisted living facility, for several years now. But in recent years, he's been declining. He's not, I wouldn't say he's diagnosed with dementia, but I don't know if this is an official diagnosis, but he's grown, from what my parents are telling me, more and more delusional. Yeah. And saying false narratives about, you know, memories and really bitter. Leaning
he's
into the very bitter side of his personality. And what I know about my grandpa and his life was he had a very traumatic childhood. He actually grew up with a stepmother who really treated him like shit. And
no, don't make me cry.
I know. It's the reason why he wanted to register all of his grandkids, female and male, like to the family registry, which was considered unconventional at the time. Yeah. So I'm the first grandchild. First child in my generation, and he put my name. Essentially, our family tree starts with him, I think.
Wow.
But
like he wanted to start over?
Yes. And I always thought he was this resilient man, and I thought he was a very strong person of faith. Yeah. He was like a professing Christian, and, you know, we used to have conversations about his spiritual experiences with God. This is when I was younger, maybe in middle school, high
right?
school.
Yeah.
But he's had a long history with family members of kind of having these really dramatic falling outs. And recently, so my dad is the middle son of three sons. So it's just a family of boys.
Oh, right.
And my grandpa was in the military. He was, you know, an admiral. So that's pretty, like, high up there, right? And then my grandmother passed away when I was young. So he's lived a long time beyond her.
And alone. Without his partner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so a good amount of that time was after he moved to California to move in with our family.
Okay.
And he's had a falling out with his first son my 큰아빠,
Ah.
and a falling out with his youngest son, my 작은아빠.
Mm.
And my dad and my mom have been his one connection to the family. But last month when my dad came to visit us, we're just casually having conversation over dinner, and I asked my dad, "Oh, how's 할아버지 doing?" And my dad, he's not a very emotional person, and he
Right.
just kind of says things matter of factly
Yeah.
and lightly, casually. He's like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, well, he finally did disown me too."
Wow.
And it has to do with his just, I think, his understanding of events and
It's getting all
misunderstanding, I should
jumbled.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, for me being like one generation removed, because I'm hearing this secondhand.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I take it for what it is, but at the same time, I can't fault it entirely, because I'm like, he's had a lot of trauma,
Yeah.
and he truly believes these things, and it's like an unfortunate thing. But my grandpa has been sick,
Right.
and of course my parents, are the ones to take care of him, and so they've been at his bedside, I think, for a couple of days now. And before I came here today, I asked my mom how he was doing. I think he's getting better. They think he just had a really bad infection with pneumonia, so she's glad that he's doing better. The hope is that he gets better and can finally be discharged.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can reconcile, but I don't know. It's been for maybe at least 6 months,
Yeah.
a tough situation.
Right.
So the
I
whole
think,
family went to visit him over
right.
Christmas,
The last
right?
thing you told me was
Yeah.
that he basically wanted everybody
He
out.
wanted everybody out. My dad and mom kind of led that. They wanted us to go insa to him, like,
Yeah.
greet him, and then they had to be kind of careful and strategic about it,
Yeah.
because before he started going on a rant, they kind of shuffled us all out. My parents did. Yeah. So it's just, it's like, how do you feel about that? Right. So I felt very kind of, 묘한 feeling. I can't describe it in English. It's very complex. Like,
yes, you can't put a finger on.
Yeah.
It's a mix of emotions.
Yeah. And just
because he is spiraling out and in this really old, bitter man state, but you knew him as your 할아버지, your grandfather, and you have these tender moments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those flash to you.
Yes.
And
I haven't spoken to him directly in months, because my parents
advise you not to.
Advise me not to.
Because you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. And so they want, I understand that too about my parents, is I would do the same, is my instinct is to protect my kids.
So before this, you would talk to your grandpa regularly?
Yeah. And I think it's because, I don't know, sometimes he, I understand from a grandparent, now being a parent myself, I understand that grandparents can see the parents as gatekeepers to their progeny, right?
Of course.
So now that we're grown, consenting adults too, like he just, and not that he did this even when we were kids, was just go directly to us.
Cut
right?
through the gate. He would be
like, for example, when my grandpa was living with us, he got into really deep into chain email.
Oh no.
And he would say, can you help me email this to this and this and this? And me not knowing any better, being a middle schooler, high schooler, I'm there,
like, sure,
typing
Grandpa.
it all up. And my dad, he doesn't explain. He's like a Korean dad. He's like, 그거 신경 쓰지 마. You don't have to. And I'm like, wait, how does a kid juggle this?
Yeah.
Because the kid is stuck in the middle. And I'm like, that's my grandpa asking me for help when you guys are at work. And I'm just at home. I have no protection.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I did have a relationship with him, and he would, even when I was working in news, and even when I first became a mom, he would call me and we would have little conversations, and he would talk to me about how his dream is for me to
Be the
next
Connie
Connie
Chung
or
of
the
our
next
generation.
Juju Chang. Yeah.
It's so funny when I told you that and you're like, oh, don't you dare say that out loud. My grandpa would say that and be disappointed that I wasn't.
Yes.
I thought that was so funny.
And then, eventually after I left the industry and left working altogether, my grandpa got it into his head that the reason the reason I'm not working now is because of Ruby and her needs. And so every time he's seen me, he's asked, is she well now? Is she normal? Which is really hard to explain to
it hurts, right?
A man of that generation. I think it hurts less because I know where it's coming from.
But it still hurts.
It still hurts. Yeah. And I think I do a good job of protecting myself and just brushing it off.
Like it stings.
Yeah. But I think because I know the truth, it that
you
protects
know
me.
what he means.
Yeah, I know what he means. He just wants to see me do well for whatever the reason. He wants to brag for you. Yeah, he had Yeochin for me.
Yeochin is this strong desire to see you.
I think if I had that desire myself, it would sting a little bit more.
And I'm so thankful. I genuinely thank the creator of the universe that I met someone like you who doesn't have that Yeochin. The greed to be somebody, air quotes, in our society, recognized, famous. That the reason I feel so comfortable around you is I've let that go on my end. I had it, and it exhausted me, and I really took time to say, what do I have in my life that it's funny you say that. Now we're talking about like sort of the end of your grandfather in, that's what's coming, right?
Yes.
That your mom is sort of trying to help you get ready for. The thing that I think profoundly changed me was seeing my father-in-law in his deathbed. And in his last moments, being surrounded by his family. And yes, he had, like your grandfather, like falling out here and there, but the room was filled with love. And I used to think he was a petty man, but then I was like, look at all these people that came in and he was laughing, he was playing the guitar, he was playing music, he had my children on his lap, even though he was on the bed. And I remember thinking, man, he lived a good life. And this is, I know. So now, from that point on, I think literally seeing him in that state, every time there's something going on, I say to myself, is this something I'm going to be thinking about in my deathbed? Is this I know that in my deathbed, I'm going to be, if I have that privilege, I'm going to be surrounded by people that I love. And I hope to spend my last days just like simmering in that love. That would be, and he had that before COVID. And I remember thinking it was so painful to lose him, of course, but thinking like what a blessing it was for his last days to be filled with so much love.
Absolutely. That's such a gift. And I love that you mentioned, like, if you have the privilege to be on your deathbed. A lot of people don't.
Right. It can be
and
sudden.
you don't have time to prepare. Yeah, I thought about that, especially with my grandpa. My grandma had a very different way that she left. I mean, she was surrounded by she was like the glue that held the family together. I mean, women hold families together.
So
women hold families together, and when they go first, it's a lot of stuff falls apart.
And losing her probably was a tremendous trauma to your
It was a tremendous trauma to my grandpa, for sure. And I think it was for my dad, too. I think my dad, in recent years, I've seen he has this yearning for his mom. but he hasn't, he came to the States when he was young in his 20s. And after that, the times he saw his mom was numbered, right? That's just the immigrant experience. And every year on Mother's Day, he writes a post on Facebook about his mom.
And you said he's not expressive, and
he's not expressive. Yeah. So I love reading his posts because it's like a little window into what, my dad, like this unemotional person, thinks. But with my grandpa, it's just like, it just made me like contemplate a lot about life and thinking about, oh my gosh, like here is, we hope that he'll get better, and this is not the moment. But immediately I was like, is this how he's gonna leave the earth?
And that makes it so sad.
Having cut off all of his closest connections, and I'm like, he had a childhood with not a lot of love.
We are crying, and it's okay to cry.
And then me not wanting that for him. Like, I don't want you to leave with like all of your grandkids cut off because your kids felt like they had to protect them from you.
Oh my God. And, so I have to ask you, I mean, not to like, I'm not, you saw Queen of Tears, right?
Yes.
And that Hanabuchi scene? Oh, yes. Oh my God, that must have broke you. Gosh. Because Queen of Tears drama, Korean drama, the main grandfather, that's literally kind of how he goes. He becomes paranoid that all of his children are out to get him,
out to get his fortune.
Like a seed gets planted and it spirals, and then he starts trusting the wrong people. And then he realizes it in his last moment, but it's too late.
It's too late. I think what got me was when Hae-in, the main character, the lead female, she's like the CEO of the mall, right? When she and her grandpa have this secret, the pen that records, and when he addresses her directly,
did you cry on that?
That part got to me when he, because it's his admission that she hears after his death that, I lived wrong.
He had that moment of clarity.
Yeah. And this is, the best that I can do for you. And
these Korean dramas, the reason we get so fucking hooked on them is that there is actually a lot of truth to these stories. And even the whole, like, when you reference your grandfather having trauma with the stepmom, even my dad had trauma also with the stepmom.
And it is so common because your mom had that too.
Yeah, they all, and then I had that. And my father will also sometimes have these reminiscing moments talking about his mother. And he lost her in high school. And that really hurt. Yeah. And I can tell, like, oh, my mother loved me so much.
Yeah. We're not, it's like, we're not who we are alone. There's so many, like, our experience and relationships, everything shape us.
Yeah.
So that makes, knowing that, it's really hard to blame anybody for the things they say or, I mean, and that might be hard for you to grasp because you have experienced that hurt very deeply. Yeah.
So since we're talking about family, I told you that my dad is now back in my life. And we've been estranged for 8 years. And seeing him again is so painful. Even, I mean, I actually, that's not the right, I feel numb.
Yeah.
It was funny because someone in one of my comments said, this must open wounds, like, or it must be like a wound to you. And I thought about that. And you know how I have this Achilles?
Yeah.
This is like one of the biggest scar that I have. And sometimes I'll like run my hand on it and I can feel and when I do that, it reminds me of when I ruptured it. But it's like really heavy skin.
Tough skin.
Tough. And it kind of reminds me of that. Like, I've buried him so many times.
You've scarred over.
Over and over.
Yeah.
And so, like, when he asked me to be back in our life, I hesitated. I just didn't know if I could do it. But I didn't want to stand in the way, like you said, where the parents are sort of the gatekeepers from grandparents to grandchildren. But I didn't want to deny my children of having an experience with their Korean grandfather, because now he's the only living grandfather.
Yeah.
And because, also he just faced... Oh my God, this wasn't my intention to make it about me.
No, it's okay.
It was, I was like,
no,
Jane, let's talk about what you're going through right now. But yeah, we are seeing each other.
So you've seen him
just once.
Okay.
We had like sort of an official thing. My Sawyer, who hadn't seen him since he was a baby, saw him, and it was just so awkward.
Awkward.
He didn't know who he was.
Okay.
He
did you prepare him?
I did. We had to talk about like, hey, he's my dad, but I have a stepmom. I think, who I didn't get along with. And so we couldn't see each other for a while. Sometimes things like that happen. And I also wanted to emphasize to them, because there's a lot of kids out there with stepmoms who have great relationships, right? And I know they know that they have friends who have stepmoms. So I said, but listen, like, that is not the case for all stepmoms. A lot of people it's almost like a bonus mom. But in my particular story, we did not get along. And so Grandpa's been away for a long time, but he really wants to see you guys. And they were like, okay. They were curious.
Yes.
And, but when Sawyer came down the stairs and he saw his grandpa, Harabaji, for the first time, he was like, what? Hi. Like, he was shy.
Yeah.
Naturally, right?
That's natural.
But I could tell he liked it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I did the right thing.
Yeah.
By my children. Like, I will never, and I think I will never stand in the way of what my children deserve. They deserve, if it's a privilege to have a grandparent. And we know that even more now, because they lost their Filipino grandpa, who they love so much.
Yeah.
So any opportunity to have a grandparent, I will not stand in the way of that. But
it helps them understand themselves too.
I hope so.
Where they come from and their identity. So I think you absolutely did the right thing, even though it was the hard thing. And your instinct was probably telling you to just go into protective mode and protect yourself and protect your kids.
Yeah.
But I think it was really good that you did that. And we talked about this before you went into that meeting. And we talked about how this was, you didn't need this, but you were doing it because you felt your dad needed it. And that's what he wanted. And so it was really a kind thing for you to do for him.
Yeah. That, I think what made me really sad is actually realizing I didn't need it. I mean, I knew it, but actually in that moment, and then, he's interacting with the children, which is great. Like, I love that. And then he kept telling me, you turned out so good. And those are I've always, of course, you always want to make your parents proud. You always want, I lived my whole existence in my childhood looking for their acceptance. Yeah. Looking for that I was, because I, as this sort of my stepmom's baggage child. Because in Korean culture, no matter how much we've come forward, there's still stigma. It's not like in American society where blended families are. I do see occasionally here in America, but in Korea, it's still very stigmatized.
Yes.
And that carries over here,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how rooted your family's in your culture. And my parents are, you know, like I've always told you, like they're from the cave ages of Korea. And so here he was he's giving me so much praise, more praise than I've ever received from him. Like, you know, he was like, you know, when your wedding was one of my proudest moments in my life, like, because I was the first one to get married and have a great wedding. When all the cousins were pitted against each other, and they would say like, so and so beautiful, so and so smart. My name was like, well, you're okay, you know. And then to be the first one to get married and to throw a lavish wedding or whatever, they were so proud, right? And I knew that in that moment, that on my wedding day, it almost felt like it was for them, and I wanted it. Finally,
because you didn't need it.
I really didn't need it,
but they needed it.
I'm like, who's this for?
Right.
But they felt so proud, but that moment could not last, because it wasn't about healing with me. It was about them showing, look at you, people that doubted us within the family.
Yes.
Look at you. You look down on us, and look at us now. But that kind of fulfillment doesn't last, because you're not really healing. It's such a moment. It's such a fleeting moment. You're not really healing the wound inside, right? And so he is sitting there, we're at the table, he's telling me all the things he's proud of, and I just felt numb.
And what was your demeanor like? Because you're
listening.
Such an effusive person.
I did not let him know my real thoughts. I just listened.
Yeah.
I just let him feel that. I think in his mind, I'm sitting there listening to him, giving me all the praises that he thinks we're healing. But I wanted that so long ago. But it sort of means nothing now.
It's like too little, too late.
So late.
Yeah.
It just came so late. And I thought, well, I actually thought this is kind of sad. But I didn't want to ruin, because it's all about perception, right? Everybody has their own truth.
Yeah.
And everybody lives in what their truth is.
Yeah.
And I didn't want, what's the point to take that away from him?
Right.
To feel like he's healing with his daughter.
Right.
I also just didn't have any energy to be like, no, that's not what we have, you know?
Yeah, you were totally like disengaged.
Okay, you know, I just want my kids to, it's not bad. I want to feel like my dad and I are okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. But mostly I want my kids to have good experience with their grandfather. But yeah, it's like you said, it's a sobering reality.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Like I want to say this for you and tell you that it's okay for it to be exactly what it was. And your goal was for your kids to see their grandpa. And in that regard, it was successful.
Yeah.
You know, and your part of your wounds, they're scarred over. Like, you had no motivation there or intent to seek further healing, because I think you learned long ago that you're not going to get what would be necessary for true healing from your parents. And so to just allow yourself, okay, I'm gonna let this meeting happen, and I'm okay with it, you know, not being any deeper than that. I think that's absolutely okay. And I think, I don't know, I want you to think about that as being a successful event in its own right, and then leave it at that. You know,
I think it's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace with
that.
I
truly
am.
And I think you are. Mm-hmm.
But I think, like, you know, there's this sad reality of like even with you.
Yeah.
It hurts to see your grandfather this way, you know?
For sure.
And if you could, because you love him so much and you have good memories, you want it to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so sad for people to not have healed.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think that was my biggest fear. That I have made my moves and choices based on, like, I don't want to end up like my stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
Because she never healed, and I genuinely believe she married my dad and fell in love with him because he had me. So she saw a man that had his daughter by his side.
Mm-hmm.
And she always wanted her father to choose her, and he never did.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was trying to be like, you got to feel sorry for her. You know, she was at his deathbed hoping he would say something like, I love you, or like, I'm sorry. And she never heard a word from that man.
Yeah.
He was stubborn to his death to not acknowledge her. And it kills her.
Oh, my God.
And she carries that, right? But it's
my God.
But she did the same shit to me.
I know. Well, because that stuff, it doesn't die with the generation, and this is how generationally it goes.
Generational
on
trauma,
and
you pass it on to the people you're supposed to love the most. And I don't want to pass that on to anybody. I want to end it with me. I want to, you know, kill it with me. And so even to this day, I don't hate my stepmom. There are moments where, because like you said, you can't, it's almost impossible to blame the person because of the circumstances. It's not an excuse, but once you get an understanding for where that person's been, you can't set aside the empathy.
Right. And never in all the time that I've heard you talk about your parents, and especially your stepmother, have I gotten the impression that you hate her or wish ill on her. And you've always acknowledged the complexity of how she became who she is today, and how it had a lot to do with the trauma that she experienced when she herself was a child.
And I think that's why I think, like, your grandpa and my stepmom, they feel the feelings, right, of their unresolved. And especially he probably dealt with when his wife, well, how old was she when your grandma
She
passed?
was pretty young. She probably was in her early 60s.
Wow.
Yeah. Young.
So in that loss, he became bitter, I think. And that kind of bitterness that grows, it starts to, like, flourish, you know? And I think because the feelings are complex, I think for some people it's easier to go through life painting things black and white. Like, to my stepmom, I was the villain in her story.
Yeah.
I left the family, even though she actually kicked me out. I abandoned them instead of working through the hard things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you literally kicked me out. And I said, okay, I give up.
Yeah.
But she repainted the story and told everybody that in the extended family that I abandoned her when she got the diagnosis for lupus and all this chronic illness she was going through, and she needed a daughter, that I left. And my brother also, I know he doesn't blame me, but he was 7 years younger than me and felt some type of way too. I know that. But it's easier to paint the story black and white, to digest.
Yeah.
To process.
Yeah. And the more you do it alone in isolation, the more weight that takes on and it becomes truth.
Yes.
Right. And that's how I imagine that's how things happen with my grandpa too. I mean, he was saying things at our last meeting over Christmas that I had never heard him say before.
You
and
were
I'm like,
shocked.
what is this? Is this like, you know, when I came out of there, I'm like, oh, he's really losing his mind. My dad's like, no, he's not.
What?
He's not senile. He's like delusional. Like he truly believes these things.
It's like those
and the bitterness is really
like
taken
those
hold.
what is those QAnon? What is it? QAnon?
Oh, QAnon. Like conspiracy theories. Well, he was believing these wild things.
Yeah, they go in and then they get hooked on a video and then they go dig. They see the same shit over and over.
Yeah.
It's also the repetition. Like I remember my stepmom always telling these same traumatic stories and reliving it over and over. And then it's like you're locked in to that anger, hate, fear, anxiety, and all that.
Yeah.
And you feel bad.
You do feel bad.
And I think that because you want to fix it, but you can't, you know, and you want to help them, but there's nothing you can do because it's that you can only help.
I think that happened with my parents is like, how much do we endure this? And we just cannot reason, and he doesn't listen to us and so, it, you know, luckily for them, they weren't the ones who cut off. It's like they were told by my grandpa.
Right,
yeah,
right.
So it's
You
kind of
cut
like
us off.
convenient for them.
Yeah.
You know, but I said, well, what happens when he needs to go to his appointment? Like he has lots of appointments to go to, and it's like, oh well, we have to take him. Like my mom still takes him, and they just have to endure that, you know, verbal diatribe and, you know, listening to these stories. So yeah, I think my mom felt very lots of mixed feelings when she's been in the hospital.
I know.
Yeah.
And that has to be so difficult because I remember the last time you told me he was like saying your mom was a terrible woman and I'm like, oh no.
And other times he's been heaping praise on her, you know? So it's kind of like whatever
obviously
he's
this person is not all right.
No. But I mean, they've done tests on him and it's not dementia.
It isn't dementia.
No. I mean, I guess they said like as you get older you can grow more bitter and stuff.
But
so
you get more stuck.
Yeah, but
I remember I told you like my parents would always watch these shows that were about like the most horrible Korean people in society, like the ones who threw away their mother in the streets and like I'm like, why are you watching these stories? And they were like so into it. We would go over to their house and they were like, they couldn't even say hi because they're so engrossed. And these are like supposedly real life replayed by actors. I'm like, these are terrible stories.
Terrible stories.
Why do you keep watching these? And they're like, oh yeah. Look at that bastard. They just they were so into it.
Yeah. And it's maybe it's some kind of release.
I know, but it's so unhealthy.
It's unhealthy.
It's like it's cathartic in a way, but it's releasing only more poison.
Right. It's like doing the opposite that Korean dramas do for us, where like some part of us is healed.
Yeah, we're talking about healing, but they're like soaking and like vengeance,
feeding in the poison. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But on that note of, you know, generational trauma and passing that on, I just read a book that was very moving, and I want to read it again because I know
you won't give it to me because you want to read it again.
I know. I will give it to you hopefully next week after I read it again. But it's called Docile.
Docile.
And I think it's like stories of or tales of the not so perfect Asian girl.
Wow.
Intrigued, right?
Is it about her life?
It's about her life, and it's an autobiographical memoir that she started writing. I think she's in her 40s now, but she started writing it 20 years ago.
Wow.
In her creative writing class. And she said, I thought I was just writing about the crazy people in my life.
Wow.
but it's just about her experience of living that immigrant life, and never feeling enough to live up to that model minority.
Did I write it? I'm just kidding.
I think you would resonate with it so much, and
absolutely.
I did too.
Yeah.
Even not having these extreme experiences.
Yeah.
But it's about, and she also talks about her mental health struggles.
Oh my
and
God.
I can only imagine, the courage. I wonder how I hope, so the author, her name is Hye Song.
Mm-hmm.
She's an artist now, but she wasn't always an artist. I think she went down the path of
when you say
becoming
artist,
a lawyer.
like what?
Like a visual artist.
Oh, wonderful.
Just
You know, that's what I wanted to
paintings.
be. And
yeah,
I thought art was
and
so
maybe
white.
you should. Maybe there's still time left to pursue that. I think I at one time thought that's what I wanted to.
I wanted
a
to be
visual artist.
There's tremendous, amazing, like modern Korean installation artists, visual artists, photography artists.
Yeah.
Originally, when I was in my photo program, that's the route I wanted to take, and then I just how white.
Oh yes.
That space is.
That's really hard
I can endure it.
I mean, I think that you're. Yeah.
I feel like
we're
such
in
a
America.
Coward. Yeah. I wish I had stayed the course. That's probably one of my regrets. I had such a vision for it, and I really wanted it.
Yeah. You're doing different kind of art now. Like performance art.
Right. Yeah. Did I tell you about the kimchi jars I made?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that was probably it's glass jars that I would crack and etch sketches of bits of my conversation with my mom.
Yeah.
And like my fingers bled through the whole process. Gosh. And I just remember when it was finally done, put up, I was like, I want to do this my whole life.
You want to do it your whole life.
I know. And then I was one and done and never went back. You know, I couldn't fathom going to grad school and being surrounded by white academia, which I knew it would be, because it was, I couldn't. And now I'm a stand-up comedian, so you know, life has weird trajectories, and I want to write a book.
Yeah,
but I don't know why it scares me.
Yeah, it is scary.
I just worry that it will open more wounds. And you know, when I wrote the children's book, it just came. Like I was like, I have to write this book, and it just came almost like a message from God. Like I was like, write it down. So there was it didn't even feel like work.
Yeah.
But I have like encountered so many people like, write your story, blah blah blah, and I'm like, there's fear there, and I don't know what it is exactly.
I think it's natural for there to be fear there.
I think I believe myself to be healed.
But you're scared for
to feel like if I write it out, that I'm actually like completely broken.
Yeah. I think that's a very real thing. Yeah. I know.
We were supposed to talk about you.
We did. We did. I mean, I think that's the beauty of
this is
our
as
podcast.
real. Yeah. There's not a lot of people that I can talk about. I mean, you're probably the only person that I can sit down and really get into it like this. Because there's so many layers to understanding this kind of the cultural aspect. And I think you having your experiences with your family, I can tell you, and you can grasp But a lot of people just like where to even start, you know?
Yeah.
Even Adonis will sometimes listen to my stories and and I actually appreciate him. He'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I just don't. My family was never like that. And I think that's honest to be able to say that and be like, I don't recognize what this is.
Yeah.
So I actually appreciate that more than him sitting there trying to like act like he gets it. But I think we're gonna have to wrap this episode up because there's literally an eyelash poking through my eyeball
it's
right now.
It's making you cry more.
Yeah, like it's like drowning in my tears. I can't do this episode anymore.
Well, thank you for letting me, kind of get that.
I know. Was it any release for you?
It was. It was a release for me.
It was supposed to be about you, and then
no.
I'm like,
no
I'm
episode
like
is ever about fully just one of us, and it's a conversation and a dialogue. So thank you for being my partner.
I love you so much.
I love you.
Truly.